Hello, welcome to the virtual open evening presentation for Applied Science Extended Certificate for an A-level course commencing in 2022 for 2 years. My name is Tony Cummings. I'm Head of Biology and Applied Science. I'd just like to take the opportunity to have a brief chat with you if you are a prospective student of this course or a parent of a prospective student of this course. Applied Science is a BTEC qualification administered by the Edexcel Pearson Exam Board. It has the equivalence of one full A-level at WJC, and as far as UCAS point scores, it has the same weighting and is acceptable by the majority of universities. It's always worthwhile at this point, any prospective student checks that the university or course that they wish to go on to, if they know this, does accept BTECs as an equivalent. The vast majority do, but there will always be exceptions. If you are thinking of doing something like dentistry, veterinary sciences, medicine, it's always worth checking if this is an acceptable course for them. For most other courses and most other universities, this should be fine. We study applied science over 2 years, the first half in year 12 and the second half in year 13. And unlike previous years of applied science, if you've got any older siblings, relatives or friends who've done this course before, there is now a mix of internal and external assessment. Applied science was always a very popular course historically, in that it was all internally marked and externally moderated, so we had a good idea of all the points along the way, what grade a student would be working towards, and there was no external examinations to worry about. That has changed, and there are external exams with the course now, and that is something to be very aware of when you are deciding whether to take this as an optional course or not. Right, grade requirements for taking the course. This is just to make sure that students are able to deal with the increased demand and rigour of an A-level equivalent subject. We would expect at a minimum anyone who is interested in taking this course to have completed double science and achieved at least CC or above grades, and we would be looking for the majority of those being higher tier, or if triple science was followed, 3 Cs, one from Bio, Chem and Physics, and again the majority being higher paper. This is just to allow students to be able to access the more difficult content of work. We would look at every student's grade profile, personality and everything about them as an individual basis, and we would take a decision based on that, but the content will be a lot more challenging than it was at GCSE, and students who haven't achieved higher grades at least a C grade would really struggle. With that in mind, as an addition to the science qualification, we would also expect students to have at least a C grade in English and Maths at GCSE. This is to allow them to access the kind of verbiage that's used in the science questions and the kind of literacy demand, and also the numeracy aspects. As you can imagine, there's a lot of numeracy that goes behind the scenes in science and chemistry, biology and physics. The idea of this course then, and the employability that it gives afterwards, and what we're aiming to do, is to build a knowledge and understanding of biological, chemical and physical principles. So this is a very good choice of qualification if you want to do some science but you don't want to commit to studying the separate sciences. We will cover some of the basic ideas of each of the 3 main disciplines. We will also look at the skills needed to perform lab work and field-based practical work, and we'll be doing hands-on work as often as possible. And it is applied science, so the applied nature is not just learning the theory, it's actually putting it into practice. That will allow us also to develop problem-solving skills, which are obviously transferable to lots of other qualifications, jobs, anything that you might want to do during your studies or afterwards. Project-based research and presentations are things that we'll be working on also. Working in work-related contexts. So in applied science, we're looking at the jobs that people would do in science after qualifying, and the context of our studies will often take this approach. Working alongside each other in a professional manner, obviously an important skill for whatever role that you find yourself working in down the line. And it's a very independent learning course, particularly as we move into the later units when we are looking at more assignment-based rather than teacher-led activities. Being able to develop independence of learning, being able to manage your time effectively, is very important for either employers in whatever field, if it's science or not, and going to higher education is something that's very well thought of and very well in demand. The structure of this qualification then is split into 4 units. and those 4 units are spread across the 2 years of the course. The first 3 units are prescribed by the exam board. They're mandatory. We have no option on what those units would be, and our 4th unit is something at the centre's choice. So the first 3 units said, then they're chosen by the exam board. They are the principles and applications of science. That's when we have an overview of the basic key concepts of biology, chemistry and physics. Practical scientific procedures and techniques, units 1 and 2 both done in year 12, will introduce lots of lab work and based on an assignment model, which will be internally assessed, I'll get to shortly. And then units 3 and 4 will be studied in year 13. Science investigation techniques looks at how practicals are designed, carried out, analysed and evaluated, and you'll be assessed on that as an external module. And then unit 4, which is actually unit 12, it's the 4th unit we'll study, but it's unit 12 of the potential choices that we have. We're looking at disease and infections this year. This is our choice unit. There's several different choices, and that may change on a year-by-year basis based on the staff involved in delivery, the interests of the cohort at the time, but there is a wide range of biology, chemistry and physics topics that we could choose at this point. This year we're looking at disease and infections as it's very relevant and in the news, and we're getting a lot of exposure to that with the COVID vaccinations and so forth that we're seeing a lot around. Unit 1 then, principles and applications of science. So it covers key science concepts in biology, chemistry and physics. This will be mostly teacher-led. You'll have 2 teachers with 4 hours per fortnight with them, and the teachers will split that workload between them based on their specialities. This unit, though, is externally assessed. You'll study this across the majority of year 12, and you'll sit some exams at the end of year 12 with a potential chance to resit them in year 13 if needed. So this examination, 90 marks, so 2 hours in 3 papers, 40 minutes of biology, chemistry and physics. If you are resitting, or if you do need to, you'll need to reset all 3 of the papers in year 13. You can't carry 1 strong score and 2 weaker ones across. So the kind of questions they'll ask involve multiple choice, calculation, short answer, open response. So it's kind of almost a step up from GCSE, but not quite as challenging as a full A-level in the respective science. But they will look at your discrete knowledge as synoptic. It covers the whole year, and it covers the content of the unit. We will aim to study this across all of year 12 and sit those exams at the end of year 12, and as I mentioned, with the potential of a reset at the end. You can get by with what's called a near pass in the externally assessed units. So these will be sat in the exam hall, they'll be sent away to be marked, and you'll get your results back at the end of the year. And I'll mention how a near pass fits in to the model towards the end after we've covered the other 3 units. Unit 2, this is an internally assessed unit, and we'll be running this in the second half of year 12, and the students are looking at quantitative laboratory techniques such as calibration, chromatography, calorimetry and lab safety. So the 4 learning aims there are the 4 assignments which will be written based on practical work that will be undertaken, the analysis of data and the write-up of an evaluation of the work that is set. So we've got titration and calorimetry, we've got calorimetry, so looking at the energy content of different fuels, chromatography, and then personal development of how your scientific skills and lab work have developed across. So each of those will be 4 independently set assignments, which will be delivered in class and then completed by the students in tutorial kind of lessons and as homeworks. They'll be internally marked by the subject staff who are teaching, and then externally moderated by the exam board to make sure everything is working okay with regards to the centre. Unit 3 is about scientific investigation skills. So learners cover the stages involved in the skills needed in planning, a scientific investigation, recording, interpreting, drawing scientific conclusions and evaluating. So the first half of year 13 will be looking at lots and lots of different practicals from biology, chemistry and physics, and looking at those skills, and then it will be assessed by a written task. So the written task will be set by the exam board, and it will be an externally marked piece of work based on a practical. Students will be given outline materials at the start, and then they will have to come up with an experiment that they would not need to carry out, but they would need to plan, record, process and look at the data of it. So again, that would be something that would be potentially sat in January with a reset in June of year 13 if needed. And then the optional unit then, again, this is a assignment-based task which will be internally marked and externally moderated. So the 4 assignments in this unit, and bear in mind this could change in a cohort that would be looking at this unit in year 13 of 2024, so we may have changed it at that point. But the 4 assignments that this year's cohort are looking at, investigating different types of disease, looking at transmission of disease, understanding how diseases are treated and managed, and understanding how the body responds to disease. So again, those would be taught in class. They would be set as assignments. They'd be marked internally by subject staff, and then potentially moderated externally by the exam board to make sure the grades that the centre staff gave are appropriate. Now, as a grading as an overall, level 3 qualifications BTEC extended certificate follows the pass to distinction star model. So there's 4 and potentially a 5th outcome where students will achieve a pass, a merit, a distinction, or potentially a distinction star. The pass grade would be the equivalent of an E grade at A level, a merit a C grade, distinction an A grade, and a distinction star an A star grade, and they would carry the same UCAS weighting points as a traditional WJC A level. The near pass comes in here for students who perhaps don't cope as well with external marks and external exams as they would with internally set coursework. The students who struggle with recall, struggle with the anxiety of the exams, may be awarded a near pass grade. So whereas they haven't achieved enough individual marks in order to get a pass grade in the external, it wouldn't stop them from getting a qualification overall. The grades that they achieved in the internal assessments, which would generally be higher, would allow them to still achieve perhaps a pass or a merit rather than a distinction or a distinction star. It all works on accumulation of points, so points are awarded in each of the 4 units, and then a threshold needs to be passed of accumulated points in order to achieve each of the different grades. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the initial lessons of the course. I hope this has given you a brief overview of the course, but if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to contact me. Students can email me on cummingsa11@hubcymru.net, or can come and see me at any time in S9. Parents, you can get in contact via that email or call into the school. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see some of you in Year 12. Take care.